We're officially 1 week away from the NFL draft, and now I'm going to be going over my final 2025 NFL mock draft. I've heard all the rumors, I've heard everything that's going on, and I really think this is going to be one of the best mock drafts out there. So please stick around to see what your favorite team does in the 2025 NFL draft. Let's get started. With the number one pick in the 2025 NFL draft, it seems like this is already the case. The way Titans fans are talking about it, the way Cam Ward's talking about it. But the Tennessee Titans are going to draft Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami. I personally don't believe that Cam Ward is the best player in this draft, but I think the Titans need a quarterback, and they're willing to reach on a guy if they believe he can be their future at the position. Next up, you have the Cleveland Browns, and although I hate this, not for Browns, I think this is a really good pick for them. I would rather see them go Abdul Carter, but I think it's all but conclusive at this point. They're going to end up going out and getting Travis Hunter from Colorado. Probably the best player in this draft class. I personally believe it'd be really good for him to go out and get Abdul Carter and just have the best pass rush in the NFL. But Travis is a great player. He could play corner and receiver. You need help at both of those spots. Not extremely bad, but you do need help at both of them. So I still like the pick there. But the reason I said I hated it was because next up at number 3, you got the New York Giants. And I believe their home run pick in this draft is Travis Hunter. And if he's gone, you're forced into a position where you either need to trade back, draft Ashton Jeanty, which would be insane to do at the number 3 overall pick, or take Abdul Carter, who I believe is the second best player in this draft. And I think that's what they're ultimately going to do. Doesn't make a ton of sense because you have Kayvon Thibodeaux, you have Brian Burns, who you just paid a lot of money to. But Abdul Carter is a home run pick. I believe personally from watching his tape. I actually called the year before that he was going to be one of the best players in this draft. But it's hard for me to make this pick knowing that I believe Ashton Jeanty would help them improve their roster more this season. But I'm going to ultimately do it, have them taking Abdul Carter. Next up at number 4, you've got the New England Patriots. And now you've just got to get Drake May some help. This is a stacked running back class, so you can get that later on in the draft. And what I personally see you doing here is going the best O-lineman in this draft, Will Campbell. He's a guy who can play tackle and guard for you. I know Mike Vrabel loves to build up through the trenches, so that's what I have them doing here. And then taking a pretty solid running back early on in the 2nd or 3rd round. Next up, you got the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think this is just the pick that makes the most sense in this draft, and that's Mason Graham out of Michigan to the Jaguars. They need help on that interior D-line. He's an extremely disruptive guy. I see him comparing a little bit to Aaron Donald. Undersized, can play. Now, no one is Aaron Donald, but if there's a guy who's came out recently who could be, it would be Mason Graham. Next up, you got the Las Vegas Raiders at number 6, and I have them taking Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State. I personally believe Ashton Jeanty is the 3rd best player in this class. Probably number 1 if you played a different position. But I think he's just a home run pick there for the Raiders. They couldn't run the ball all last season. Geno Smith and Pete Carroll are both better when they have a great running back. So I love that pick there. Next up, you got the Jets. And the Jets are a pretty hard one. I think there's a multitude of picks you could make. I really like Armand Membu here. I really like Tyler Warren here. I really like Walter Nolan here, but I don't think Walter Nolan is going to be a top 7 pick in this draft. But what I ultimately have them doing here is going Tyler Warren out of Penn State. I just think he's such a great player, and it would help Justin Fields out a lot if you gave him a really great tight end who could do it all. So that's who I'm going to have them taking here. Next up, you've got the Carolina Panthers, and I believe the Carolina Panthers are going to get Bryce Young some help in this draft and go Tet McMillan out of Arizona. A big body guy, runs a 4.5, so he's not going to get a ton of separation, but he has a huge catch radius, and I believe he's going to be a playmaker on Sundays. Next up, you got the New Orleans Saints, and this is where I have Shedeur Sanders getting drafted. I think if Shedeur Sanders doesn't get drafted here to the New Orleans Saints, a team's going to trade up for him in the 12 to 15 range. A team like the Steelers, maybe even the Rams if Matthew Stafford's looking to retire in the next 2 to 3 seasons. But I have them going Shedeur Sanders because of that Derek Carr injury that's probably going to put him out all season. Next up, you got the Chicago Bears. And I personally don't know what the Bears are going to do here. I think they'd love to have Ashton Jeanty on the board. I think they still could use some O-line help, but it's not as big of a need as it was because they've got some talent on this roster now. But who I have them ultimately going with is some type of edge rusher. And that edge rusher for me is probably going to look different than some other people because I personally love Mike Green. But do I believe that Mike Green is the best player in this class on the edge? Probably not. He's probably the third or fourth best. I personally think they'll probably end up going Mykel Williams or Jalen Walker, getting one of those Georgia guys. And I personally believe it's probably going to be Mykel Williams out of Georgia. Next up at number 11, you've got the San Francisco 49ers. They need O-line help to protect Brock Purdy if they're going to pay him. They could also use interior D-line help or corner help. I love Walter Nolan going here, but I don't think that's the pick they're going to make. I also love Jahdae Barron going here, and I don't think that's the pick they're going to make. Going to end up going Armand Membu out of Missouri, even though I don't think he's the biggest need for them right now. I think that's planning ahead to invest in the quarterback position to ensure that he's going to be protected for years to come. Next up, you got the Dallas Cowboys, and it sucks that Ashton Jeanty's gone. It sucks that Ted McMillan's gone. So you're really in this position where it's just like a what do you do situation. And I personally think their best move here is probably to trade down. But I don't know if that's something that they're going to be able to do. This is really the pick in the draft where I can flat out just say I do not know. If they don't trade down, I'd look for them to go Luther Burden III, maybe even Matthew Golden here. But I'm going to ultimately have them going Luther Burden III here. Great receiver, fell off this past season because of bad quarterback play, but he's shown us that he's able to produce, and he's really good at the game of football. Next up at 13, I think this is an easier pick. You either have to protect Tua or you have to replace Javon Holland. I think there's a safety in this draft that could actually replace him pretty well, and that's Malachi Starks out of Georgia. Really instinctive player. He's going to come in and grind. Teammates at Georgia, coaches raved about him, so I just think he's a pro's pro, and I love him going there to the Dolphins. Next up at 14, I've constantly had the Colts going Tyler Warren. I think that's the best pick for them here, but in this particular mock draft, he's already gone. So what do they ultimately do? I don't really know. They have a nickel, so they don't need Jahdae Barron. They have an interior pass rusher in DeForest Buckner, so they don't need Walter Nolan. They could maybe use Jihad Campbell or a guy like that. They're really just a what are they going to do team. There's a guy named Tyler Booker out of Alabama who's a pretty solid guard. I don't see him being a top 15 pick in this draft. So I have them ultimately going with Jalen Walker out of Georgia here. You see, he played pretty well in that Texas game, which is a good team with a good O-line. Showed that he can compete against high-level players. So that's who I'm going to have them taking. Next up at 15, I think the Falcons need pass rush help more than anyone can even realize. They traded for Matthew Judon last offseason, and it did not help them out in the way they were expecting, so I like Mike Green out of Marshall going there. Next up at pick 16, you've got the Arizona Cardinals, and I personally like you going with O-line help or corner help. And when you look at who's available at this moment, who's going to help make your team better, I think it's Jahdae Barron out of Texas. Really great corner, can play anywhere on the back end of the defense. Ultimate just playmaker, and that's what I think you need with a top pick in the draft. Next up at 17, you've got the Bengals. They just need help on that defense, and I think the best player still available on the defensive side of the ball is Walter Nolan. As some of you guys know, I go to Ole Miss. I got to watch this guy play a ton. Coaches rave about him. Fans rave about him. I rave about him because I just saw the disruptor that he is and can be if he gets even better coaching at the next level. Next up at number 18, you've got the Seattle Seahawks. This is where I look for either Gray Zabel to go or I look for Tyler Booker to go. I personally think they're going to go Tyler Booker here because he's just shown that he can do it at that guard position, and I think that's going to help them for years to come on that O-line that they just can't seem to get right. Next up, the Buccaneers lost all of their linebackers in NFL free agency this offseason, so I love the pick of Jihad Campbell. I think that's going to be one of the better picks in this entire first round, him falling to 19. Next up, you've got the Denver Broncos, and man, there are a few things I could see here. One would be Matthew Golden. 2 would be Omarion Hampton. 3 would be Kenneth Grant. And 4 would ultimately be Emeka Egbuka. Now, which one do I think they're ultimately going to take? Which one do I think is going to help their team the most? Omarion Hampton. This guy, to me, screams pro running back. Screams that he's going to be a top 15 running back in the NFL, and he's a little forgotten about because Ashton Genty's in this class, but him and Genty are far and above everyone else in this draft class at the running back position. I think Denver could be scary next year if they get Omarion Hampton here because they added Evan Ingram, so they shored up that tight end spot. And getting Omarion Hampton on top of Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, and some other guys. Maybe get a receiver too in round 2. We'll just see what they ultimately do, but I think they could be scary. Next up, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers going Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. I don't love this pick. I don't believe Jackson Dart is a first-round pick in the NFL. I believe that he has the chance to become an upper-tier NFL quarterback one day. He has the height, the weight, the arm strength is there. It's not top in the league, but it's definitely there. He has a great deep ball, but he played in a system that is extremely easy. It's definitely a college offense. His footwork declines when he's under pressure. So I think this is just a guy who's coming in and he's a little raw. He needs time. And I don't know if the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to give him time because I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base wants to deal with Mason Rudolph for another full season. So I think his NFL career could go downhill if they don't give him a great opportunity. But with him having a good deep ball, they've got DK Metcalf and George Pickens. I think he could make it work, but I think it could hinder his potential a little bit. Next up, you got the LA Chargers. And I think you've got a few things you could do here. I think it just comes down to what's your biggest need. And I think what you're ultimately going to say is we can either get Matthew Golden or Emeka Egbuka, shore up that wide receiver spot, but they both play similarly to Ladd McConkey. Do you want to get a lot of guys like that? Or do you want to take a tight end who you've worked with before if you're John Harbaugh in Colston Loveland? And that's what I'm ultimately going to have them doing here. Maybe go with Kenneth Grant too. Maybe even Will Johnson, but I definitely think they're taking a Michigan player here if the board falls like this. Next up, you've got the Green Bay Packers. You need a receiver more than anything. Do you have a higher grade on Matthew Golden or do you have a higher grade on Emeka Egbuka? I'd say Egbuka coming into the combine, but after seeing what Matthew Golden ran, I think they're ultimately going to go with Golden, get a burner, deep threat because Jordan Love is a big play hunter. That's one of his biggest flaws is that he oftentimes won't take what the defense is giving him because he's got that big arm, a lot like Brett Favre. So we'll just see what they do there, but I definitely expect them to go wide receiver or corner, maybe go Will Johnson there. They could use a pass rusher as well, but I think the pass rushers in this draft are just deep enough where you don't have to force a pick there. Next up, you've got the Minnesota Vikings, and I really like the Minnesota Vikings to go Omarion Hampton if he's still here, but I have him being taken, so I think you get a running back later on. And I personally love them going Will Johnson. You lost your corners in NFL free agency, and I think Will Johnson showed at his pro day he can play. There are some top speed concerns with him, but I think he proved that he can keep up in the NFL at his pro day, so we'll just have to see what he actually ends up looking like. Here, you have the Texans, and I know you need O-line help more than anything in the world. Don't get me wrong, but I just think C.J. Stroud is going to want to play with Emeka Egbuka, so if you could get him, I think he fits Nico Collins' game perfectly. I really do. And it's hard for me to pass on Josh Simmons and Kelvin Banks Jr. here because I think both of them are top 15 picks in a lot of my mock drafts. But it just so happens that they're not in this one so far. So what I think they might end up doing is they might go Kelvin Banks Jr. because they just couldn't believe that he fell to them and then trade back into the first round and get Emeka Egbuka. We saw them do this with C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson in that draft, and I just think it fits their aggressiveness. Get players that your players want to play with, who are pros, come in, fit the culture. I just love that pick for them. Next up, we got the LA Rams. I think they're probably going to go tight end in round 2 or 3, maybe even linebacker in round 2 or 3, but I think here you see Josh Simmons on the board. I think you've just got to make that pick. O-line is what ultimately cost you that Eagles game, and I think if you just secure your O-line, you have a chance with Devontae Adams and Puka both in your wide receiving core to be an elite NFL offense next season. So we'll have to see how that goes. Next up, you got the Baltimore Ravens, and I personally like James Pierce Jr. going here. I think that he showed out at the Combine. I think he had solid tape. There are a few concerns, but I just think he's going to be successful in the NFL. Next up, you got the Detroit Lions, and Man, it's hard to see Emeka Egbuka here and pass on him. It really is. Because I know the Lions have receivers, but they could use a number 3. They really could. You've got J-Mo. You've got Amon-Ra. You've got Sam Laporta. And I just think Emeka Egbuka could take this offense to a whole new level, help out the new OC after losing Ben Johnson. But I could also see you going Donovan out of Boston College here. I think it's just really what you prefer. And I think this draft is more stacked at the edge position, so you can get away with taking Emeka Egbuka here. Crazy pick that not a lot of people are making, but I think it makes sense when you really think about it. Next up at pick 29, we've got the Washington Commanders. I think they definitely need to go running back in this draft, but do you reach on a guy who's probably a second-round talent in Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, or maybe even Quinshon Judkins, whichever one fits how you want to run the ball, how you want to play? And I say no. I think Gray Zabel can play every position on the O-line, and I think he's a great pick at 29. Next up, we got the Buffalo Bills. And, man, it's hard for me to see Trey Amos here and not pick him. But I think they're in a position where they need edge rusher more. So Donovan out of Boston College is a great pick here. Next up, you got the Chiefs, and they need O-line help pretty bad. But when you really look at it, outside of Josh Connolly Jr., there's not much there. So I think you've got to take him. Because if you don't, there won't be much else there left for you. Next up, we got the Eagles, and I've made this pick in a lot of my drafts. And it's honestly Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. You have 2 incredible corners, one to play nickel, one to play on that outside guarding the X receiver. If you can get Trey Amos to guard the Z receiver, you have officially made the best secondary in the NFL without a doubt. You're filling in for Darius Slay, losing him this offseason. But would you prefer that, or would you prefer to take Kenneth Grant to replace Milton Williams? I really don't know. Part of me really wants to go Trey Amos, but the other part says if Kenneth Grant is here, they're going to take him. So that concludes my final mock draft for the 2025 NFL Draft. Here you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed it.